Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. This is James Fifelski with the Presumed Innocent Project. Today, after we all sit around and talk to each other at the water cooler about the Super Bowl, as a criminal defense attorney, as someone who has been involved and so interested in criminal justice reform, I want to take just a few minutes today to reflect on exonerations. Because when I started in my own journey as a criminal defense attorney to understand a little bit more about the people who had gone through the process of being exonerated, these people who have sat in jails or prisons for years, if not decades, to later be released by a judge who, by court order, decreed that person not guilty, actually innocent of a crime. Exonerations are things that shouldn't happen, because there shouldn't be innocent people convicted of crimes they did not do. And yet it happens all the time, unfortunately. And as a defense attorney, the more I started to recognize the human beings involved in these exoneration sagas, not only the individuals who were incarcerated unjustly, but also the attorneys who stepped up to clear people of unjust, wrongful convictions, to set them free from the cage, the jail, the prisons, because that person did not actually break the law as it was believed. I discover so much more reason, so much more incentive, so much more motivation, so much more fire to strengthen me day in and day out when I have to go to bat for people who are accused of wrongdoing, accused of breaking the law, sometimes very serious crimes. I often get people who say, no, I didn't even do that. I wasn't there. I have an alibi, or I have testimony from friends or family who will say, I never did that. That wasn't me. Sometimes it's not as clean cut as that. Sometimes it's, well, these were my intentions. I meant to do something good or decent and it got misinterpreted, or I was trying to protect myself and that's why I got into that fight with so and so. Self-defense can be a valid defense. It means no crime was broken. Whatever the case may be with each and every individual, the reality of our justice system right now is that there are people wrongfully accused and wrongfully convicted of crimes who are sentenced to jail, sentenced to prison for years, and they simply shouldn't be there. So if we, especially as defense attorneys, but any of you who are interested in criminal justice reform, interested in fairness and equity in the justice system, the legal system is something that, while we don't expect to be thrust into it, oftentimes we are, most unexpectedly. I've worked with other lawyers who've been accused of crimes, doctors, pharmacists, nurses, plumbers, electricians, all sorts of professionals never expect to be thrust into the criminal justice system, but they are at one point or another. So I think it's so important, especially for those of you who are criminal defense attorneys, to raise your awareness of the situations that occur that lead to people being falsely convicted and wrongfully incarcerated and later exonerated, because it's been so helpful for me to understand that there are certain duplicitous and actually evil things that happen that result in the wrong person or an innocent person being locked up for years or decades. I just pulled this up from the National Registry of Exonerations. They do great work in exposing what's been in the public record in courts across America. Ever since 1989, they've been logging exonerations, laying out the details, the facts, the laws that allowed for the exoneration, some of the attorneys who helped restore the innocence and liberty of the people who have been exonerated. And there's this one individual who recently got added to the National Registry of Exonerations, Bernard Howard. And if you're listening, Mr. Howard, I just want to say I thank you for having the courage to continue fighting for your own innocence even when other people did not fight for you. Wherever you are, I mean, total respect to you. If I get any of the details wrong, I apologize in advance, but I just want other people to understand your story and other people's stories like you, because the more we understand that real human beings are suffering the injustice of incarceration for crimes they did not commit, the more motivated we will become in helping to reduce and eliminate the need for exonerations altogether. Well, back in 1995, Mr. Howard was accused of a triple murder with 2 other co-defendants. What's interesting as I read through this, it's got all the makings of sort of a John Grisham thriller, but unfortunately, the end result is that Mr. Howard and his 2 co-defendants end up convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison, only to discover 25 years later, after 25 years in prison, fighting through the appeal process, fighting through habeas corpus, fighting to restore his freedom, did it come to light that a key witness, Joe Twilley, apparently was a jailhouse snitch, is what they're often called. He claimed and testified that when he was in lockup with Mr. Howard waiting trial, Mr. Howard confessed to killing these other people. And Mr. Twilley was allowed to testify against Mr. Howard's his trial, and that ultimately helped Mr. Twilley get extra credit so he could get out of jail earlier, could help with his own cases, because he had already pled guilty himself in the past to murder. And so the story goes. Jailhouse snitches. That kind of testimony is inherently incredible, and yet it was used by the prosecution as one of the key aspects to convict Mr. Howard wrongfully. We also find out in this saga that the police department forced a confession out of Mr. Howard, that detectives, I believe at the Detroit Police Department or the Wayne County Sheriff's Department, one of the two, had typed up a statement for Mr. Howard, who was 18 at the time and who couldn't read very well, typed that up to get Mr. Howard to sign, and promised that he'd be released from jail if he signed it. It was a false promise. It was a forced confession. He signed it naively, thinking it was the right thing to do. Put yourself in his position at 18 years old. What would you do? You have no clue. And especially if you don't have strong legal counsel to protect you in your claim of innocence against the machinations of the big, powerful criminal justice system and the prosecution. Interestingly, Mr. Howard had an alibi that he was somewhere else, and had some testimony that in fact he was not where the murders occurred, but he was somewhere else with friends. That was put up as testimony at his trial, but the combination, unfortunately, of a forced confession that was a false confession, put together by the police department and admitted as evidence at the trial, along with jailhouse testimony that was false and that was self-serving for Mr. Twilley. Those two major components seem to be the recipes for a wrongful conviction. Ultimately, Mr. Howard was convicted of, I believe, a triple homicide, sentenced to life in prison. And as I said, he believed in his innocence. He fought through the appeal process, and it wasn't until 2017, 2018, where an Innocence Project attorney came in to fight for his cause, who ultimately worked with the prosecuting attorney's office, who understood the problems beneath the conviction that led to the conviction. They worked together and brought the case to the Wayne County Circuit Court in Detroit, Michigan, at which time Judge Miriam Bazzi in 2020, just last year, granted his release order and granted an order setting aside the conviction and dismissing the charges, clearing him. And I want to say what I want to repeat what the judge said to him, because I think it's so important to remember. Again, this is a human life. Mr. Howard is a human individual, just 18 when all these things happened. And now 25 years later, he was being released by the judge, who said, "You have been given back what has been taken from you. You understand more than everyone how precious our time is and what we choose to do with that time. I recognize that you have every right to be angry, but you have already lost so much to that. I hope you find peace. I hope you find solace. I hope you find comfort in knowing that the label of murderer is gone and replaced with exonerated." And finally she says, "You did not gain your freedom on a technicality. You gained your freedom because you were innocent." That last statement about technicality. There's so many lay people who haven't experienced the difficult challenges of the criminal justice system from the inside, who haven't worked with people accused of crimes, and often think that criminal defense attorneys work to get people off on a technicality, work to get their cases dismissed on a technicality, when that couldn't be farther from the truth in most cases. Like Mr. Howard's, we are fighting to restore someone's freedom when that freedom has been taken away unjustly or without proper cause, or sometimes the attempt is to take away much more of that person's freedom than is justified by the particular circumstances. Say a 10-year sentence instead of a 2-year sentence for some type of crime. These are the things that we criminal defense attorneys fight for every day. And as a criminal defense attorney, I want to continue to call out to all of you who work in the criminal justice system, especially those of you who are criminal defense attorneys, to remember how important each and every one of your clients is, how important each and every one of their stories is, how important their life's journey is, and that you and I get to share and take part in their journey and in the struggle for their life, the struggle for their freedom, probably one of the biggest struggles in their lives. We get to share in that. And let's put our skills, let's put our zeal, let's put our strength, our motivation, our strategies, our heart, our soul into helping each and every one of our clients, one client at a time. I believe if we do that, then we can help eliminate stories of false and wrongful conviction and incarceration like that which occurred to Mr. Howard. We can help make exonerations a thing of the past. That's one of my goals with the Presumed Innocent Project, is to get out in front of exonerations so they're unnecessary. If we level up our practices as criminal defense attorneys, we work hard with heart, soul, mind, all the tools that we can to help our clients in the best, most effective way, then we can make exonerations a thing of the past. I'm going to sign off now. Again, I want to wish Mr. Bernard Howard the very best. If you want to reach out to me, you can find me at presumed-innocent.com. I really wish you the best. I hope that your story helps other people recognize how important criminal defense work is, but also how important criminal justice reform is. Have a great day, everybody.